What up? It's your boy, Nick Incredible, man. And yes, I am back at it again, and I am 2 weeks behind, and I almost was behind this week, but I finished everything, and I'm good to go, and I'm back on track because this is New Amsterdam Season 3, Episode 3, man. And this episode was crazy. Wasn't a lot going on, but it was very raw and emotional. Let's get into it, man. Like I said, this episode went crazy. And what I mean by that is because it was very emotional. And that's something that New Amsterdam does wonderfully week in and week out, man. Other shows that I watch, they're very entertaining, they're good, and they have emotional moments. But with New Amsterdam, you get that emotional impact and that touch of je ne sais quoi, if you will, from every character. You feel everything. It feels like you're really inside the show, like you're taking part with everything that's taking place, and to just be so wrapped up and captivated by all of that, that's just wonderful writing on the behalf of the cast and the writers of everyone at New Amsterdam, man. That is just pure greatness, because this episode showcased a lot of stuff with our main characters and some of the stuff that they were dealing with, and a lot of the side stuff as well, like Iggy. Let's talk about Iggy first, because this episode highlighted the fact that we all know that Iggy's a good doctor, but this highlighted that fact that Iggy's like a very concerned, hands-on psychiatrist. And we knew that, but like just to the leaps and bounds that he's willing to go through to help his patients, it shined so much in this episode because he's trying to get Max to let him see some of his patients, because Max is on this kick that the hospital's not safe, which it's not, and that was made very evident in this episode between Max and Sharp and Dora when she came back, which was nice. But Iggy's trying to see some of his patients face to face because the hospital's internet and Wi-Fi is laggy. He keeps breaking up every time he's trying to have like an actual session, and that disconnection between him and the patients, it's really not helping. So he's trying to find a way to connect with his patients and help them in the process. So we end up seeing one of his patients, I can't remember her name, the girl that has the autoimmune disease, and she's going stir crazy being wrapped up inside her home, because that's her everyday normal life even before the pandemic. And with the pandemic, it's been a little bit more stressful because her parents are so intent on keeping her in that bubble of their house and keeping her safe and wrapped up inside the house, because they're so terrified of everything that's going on the outside, which was valid. But when Iggy sat down to talk to her, he noticed that she was hurting herself just to relieve the pain of being alone, because she can't contact with any of her friends. She's trapped inside her house. Her parents are, let's be real, are getting on her nerves. So she can't really handle all that. She can't really even express it or be a teenager. And that's kind of really weighing on her, and we see that Iggy's dealing with that with her and trying to help her. And then he sits down and has a conversation with her parents to tell them that she's hurting herself, and they're like, well, how could we miss this? Oh my gosh, we're so sorry, we didn't know. And then boom bam, Iggy tries to give them these different solutions to help them, like, well, bring her here, let me talk to her in person or something, let her out, maybe just to get maybe a glimpse of fresh air or something, because she's going stir crazy inside the house. And they weren't having it at all. Even after Iggy told them that she was hurting herself, they were like, well, that's fine, that's cool, because as long as she's alive, we're okay. And I'm not a parent, but I can understand where they're coming from, and then I can understand totally where Iggy's coming from, because are you legit gonna just sit there and let her harm herself, and as long as she's alive, you're okay with it? But as the episode progressed, we see that the girl ended up running away on her own because she couldn't take it anymore. And with her autoimmune disease, or she has something along the sort, I can't quite remember. But with that, it's very toxic for her to be out there with all the germs and everything and not have a mask on or anything like that. But at this point, she didn't care, and she was probably on the verge of killing herself if Iggy hadn't found her to really just help her. And it was a nice scene to have all that with Iggy. And at the end of the episode, we see that Iggy having a conversation with her allowed her to really have that conversation with her parents, I'm assuming. And then boom bam, at the end of the episode, we see that Iggy brought her to connect with a group that has the same disease that she has, and they're teenagers, so they understand what she's going through, so she can have that conversation and talk to them, and they can help her and she can help them at the same time, because they understand each other and they all know what they're going through. Then he brought another group, which is the parents of those same kids, to her parents to kind of help them process what they're going through and deal and handle with everything. And that just shows that Iggy is such a fantastic doctor, man. But At the very ending of the episode, we also see that Iggy is dealing with his own problems about the eating disorder. Now, I thought they were going to kind of push it to the back burner. I thought they teased us with it with the first two episodes, but then I thought they were going to push it to the back burner because I missed a couple weeks, but they didn't. They dove straight into it. We handled all the other stuff, but then we see Iggy dealing with his problems at the very ending of the episode, but he can't quite face them just yet because he pulled up this group of like the anonymous overeaters eating disorders, but he didn't go through with it. He pulled it up, he started to, but then he kind of just chickened out and backed away. So I feel like this season we're definitely going to deal with Iggy dealing with his problems as well while helping people at the same time. Now, Max and Helen. Now, you guys know I love Max and Helen, but this wasn't a Max and Helen relationship where they won't they type episode. It was a Max and Helen butting heads because of what the hospital needs. And a public hospital needs people coming in to have procedures and all that stuff. True, because without the public, a public hospital will shut down because they don't have the money to operate and function. And that's legit, and I get that. And that's what Dora was trying to get across to Max, to tell him, to do this PSA, to get people to come back into New Amsterdam, to have surgeries and all this other type of stuff. But I agree with Max. The hospital's not safe, but at the same time, you can't not have people not coming to the hospital because they are afraid and terrified. Everybody's scared and terrified, and that's why I agreed with Max in the beginning of what he was saying, and I agreed with Helen agreeing to do the PSA, because at the same time, we can't not have people coming to the hospital, but we can't not have people coming to the hospital, if you kind of understand what I'm saying, because we need these people to come in there to be safe, because prime example is Millie. We see this episode that Millie, which was one of the cancer people in this surviving group going through chemo and everything with Max in the first season. And Millie seemed like she was doing so good. She was home and, with COVID and everything. So she didn't take it. She didn't come back to the hospital. She was fine and she started to feel better. But her cancer metastasized, and that ended up killing her the exact same moment she came back to the hospital, because she had got so far along because she wasn't continuing with her chemo. And it was such a hard, sad scene, because we see Max fighting for the people, basically for them not to come to the hospital, but then we see Helen fighting for the people to come to the hospital, and they were butting heads a little bit in that situation. But I agreed with both of them because they both made valid points. But in that situation, I was leaning towards more of Helen's point of view, because we can't just let these people continue to sit at home and be afraid and die. And that really touched Helen, and it touched Max as well, because knowing that he knew Millie and he was a part of that group. And Helen had a breakdown on camera. That's just, it is what it is. She had a breakdown on camera, and it got recorded, and Dora released it, because what Dora stated to Max is that the truth means a lot more than just some vague promises that you made to these people. Well, this is our nice little room with heavily vented air filters, and it's cleaned daily, and bada 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 bada. Dude, that's cool, that's fine, but that's not going to get people in the doors, because they're like, oh, okay, well, cool. Well, then everybody's going to want to rush to that one room. This is the only safe room. Everywhere else is not safe. No, that's not what we're saying. No. So you be honest with people and tell them that you're trying, but you guys can't not come to the hospital if you feeling some type of way. If you feel bad, come to the hospital and let us help you if we can, whether you're afraid or not, because everybody's afraid in this situation right now. This is new to a lot of people. So being afraid is something that everybody's feeling. So if you feel like you need to come to the hospital, you come to this hospital. And that video got 3.2 million views, and it got people to start coming back to the hospital. And we end up seeing I can't remember her name, one of the other members of the group that Max was in the first season, and she came back because she heard about Millie and she saw Sharp's video and was like, well, I feel like I want to get a checkup and start my chemo again, because she doesn't want what happened to Millie to happen to her. And I felt like Sharp's message got through to people, and that was a good thing. But it was nice to see Dora again, and Sharp and Max were butting heads, but then they ultimately came to the same conclusion, realistically. And at the end of the episode, we see Max calling Luna's grandparents and telling them that, you know what? Bring Luna back to me, because I want to see her. I've already missed a lot of first in her life, and I don't want to miss anything else. And it seems like they asked him, is everything safe in New York? And he was like, well, it's safe enough. So bring my daughter back to me. And I thought that was one of the highlights of the episode for me. Now let's talk about Bloom this episode, because we see Bloom in the ER and she's dealing with this patient that comes in from a rideshare service, and the rideshare driver diagnoses the chick and tells her what's wrong, and Bloom kind of dismisses her a little bit pretty much throughout the entire episode. And then the chick comes back and tells her and diagnoses her again, and even saves her with a needle to the chest, because like the chick couldn't breathe in one moment, and Bloom just flipped the script all on this chick. She started teasing her about being a rideshare and knowing medical terms. Is like, okay, thank you, WebMD. But like, she was all on this chick's case, but like, it just screamed that this chick was a doctor in another country, man. It like let's be honest, like, you didn't need any pretext or anything. When she started naming all that stuff off, it just seemed like she was a doctor in another country. And when she injected her with the needle without a misstep, let's be 100%, that was a given. And by the way, in that moment, I mean, I know it was written into the story, but in that moment, nobody else was there, and there was one ER chick that you could kind of see in the background, and this lady screamed for help, like, help, she can't breathe, and nobody done a thing. I mean, I know it was written in the story to actually do that, but I'm just saying, nobody moved. So this chick doing this actually saved her life. Sure, wasn't right for her to do it. And like, you know, the ends don't always justify the means, because let's say something went wrong, then you could have killed her. Nothing did, but let's say something could have. But it's a good thing she saved her. Like, if you know what I'm saying, like, her doing it at the same time was bad, but it saved someone. But that doesn't just make it all go away, if you understand. And then we see at the end of the episode what she diagnosed the girl with, she actually had. Bloom had to listen to her, and Bloom went to apologize, and we see that she's living in her car, and she was a pediatric attending in Pakistan, but you know, she's not now. She's a rideshare driver, and she's living in her car, and Bloom just wanted to help her because she helped her with her patient, which was nice, man. It was nice, and it's nice to see that she kind of helped her along in that situation. I guess maybe like a good deed for a good deed, if you will. Now, my boy Reynolds. Now, before I start about the whole incident in any way, Reynolds is coming back to the show. Reynolds is coming back to the show. Now, we see this episode that Reynolds' mom had a fall, and we learned that, you know, he wanted to get her checked out, and she has adult onset diabetes, and it's bad to where like her pancreas isn't, you know, like making its own insulin or whatever, so she has to take insulin shots to, you know, to keep up, and she has to kind of like divide it down with her meals and breakdowns and stuff. So we see that his mom is going to need around the clock care this episode, and Reynolds was willing to take her to Sacramento with him and Evie, and his sister was not having it because Reynolds up and left, so his sisters had to take on that role of seeing about their mother constantly while he was already away, and they were not willing to let him take their mother away. But we see that this episode, his mother was like, you know, I'm fine, I'll handle it, so if you want to go back to Sacramento, you go. And she didn't want to feel like she pressured him into staying, but we could tell all over Reynolds' face that he didn't want to leave his mother. You know, he's a mother's boy. I mean, me, myself included, love my mama, but he wanted to stay, but like, you know, he had his own life going on. He was dealing with Evie at the same time, and we see that Evie is in the background feeling some type of way, like she doesn't want to just rip Reynolds away from his mom. And at the end of the episode, we see that Evie decided to break off the engagement, and her and Reynolds are no longer together, and Reynolds is staying in New York. Now, I'm gonna be 100%. It's sad that, you know, him and Evie broke up because they seemed like an all right couple, but I just didn't care about Evie, man. I'm gonna be 100%. I just didn't care about her at all. And I'm 100% okay that she broke up with Reynolds, but I will give her credit because of what she done. It was a sacrifice that she had to make, but she made it, and she didn't put any pressure on Reynolds or anything. She just done it, and she was like, okay, and she just handed it the ring, and it was it, man. And don't get me wrong, she's a cool chick and all, but you know, I just didn't care about their relationship. And my boy Reynolds is back on the show now. Like, he's not in Sacramento, you know, he's back at New Amsterdam. And that was episode 3, man. And I gotta say, it was 100% legit. And I'm gonna go dive into episode 4, man. This your boy Dick Incredible. Don't forget to smash the like button till you can't smash it. Need more, comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them and subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. Peace out.
I cannot complain because today, I'm doing my